Thank you very much, everyone, for joining our hosted webinar with Ortens, Transforming Learning Spaces. We'll just give it another minute or so because the attendees are still flooding in. Let's kick off. Thank you very much, everyone that's joined. Appreciate everyone investing an hour of their time into this webinar. Hope you find it really informative, useful, engaging. We try and make it quite interactive. In our head office at Gatwick, where I am at the moment, the weather is absolutely stunning. So appreciate you sitting in front of your laptops instead. Hopefully your scones and jam will help make up for the vitamin D you're losing. So go and have a good time. I think it's going to be really enjoyable. Before we kick off into the main webinar, just to give a brief introduction to Pinnacle and our collaboration with Ortens. Alex will give a bit of a background of Ortens and the format of how we're going to run the webinar today, and then off we go. So I'm the managing director of Pinnacle. We design, refurbish, fit out and furnish learning spaces. We're a nationwide company. We're one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in our little sector. And this is our strapline. We co-create spaces that transform the experience of learners. And a couple of words just to pick out there. The word co-create, we're speaking with educators, students all week, every week, hundreds every week. We're speaking with main contractors, building new schools, working with architects, designing schools, multi-academy trusts, learning, local authorities, councils. And one of the most important things we feel is that everyone's aligned on the same journey together, focused on the end goal. And the second word is just the experience of learners, the learners themselves, because it's very easy in the pressure of life and the paperwork and the budgets and timescales and Ofsted and everything else to sometimes perhaps lose a bit of vision on the actual learners themselves. So we want to really make sure we retain that laser focus. Now, around our collaboration with Ortens, we've been working with Ortens for a couple of years. We've built the space model, which got a QR code there on the page. It's not really the subject for the webinar today, but it all kicked off a couple of years ago. I went over to see Alex and Lena. We'd never met before. I reached out to them out of the blue, but I was a bit frustrated. On this webinar today, you're going to see some really amazing learning spaces. There's some great learning spaces in Denmark that Lena's going to talk us through. You're going to see some outstanding learning spaces in England and UK. Perhaps a bit of a shout out to Scotland, actually. They're probably a bit ahead of the rest of the UK on this. But I was quite frustrated a couple of years ago because it felt like these were the exception rather than the rule. And you'd go into a new build school and it could look quite sterile and rows of desks and chairs. So I said to Alex and Lena, look, we're doers. We're in this marketplace. We're talking to all these people. We're doing all this design and refurbishment. But you guys are educationalists. You understand education. You understand learning pedagogies, educators, students. How can we work together, get some momentum around a conversation that can move the change of dial a bit? So that's where it started from. As a result of that, we built space. The idea of the space model is a really practical, tangible framework within the reach of every school, any budget, just to give a clear journey to putting a learning space, developing a learning space which students and educators are at the heart of, and trying to make it easier for people to push those boundaries. So that's the background to our collaboration and really why we're doing this webinar today amongst other collaborations. So Alex, do you want to just tell us briefly about Ortens and how today's going on?
Well, I'm so delighted to be here, Daryl. Thanks for the scones and the jam and cream. We're really excited about this project as well. It's great to put space together with you. Ortens work all over the world. I'm based in my shed in southeast London in in England. Lena, who will be speaking later on in this session, is based just outside Copenhagen in Denmark. Lena and I have worked together for many, many years. And we love working with the people who love learning. So it's young people themselves, it's educators. And what we bring is that kind of link between people who are interested in learning spaces and not just the spaces, but the cultures of learning, and the young people themselves. So we love those conversations. So it's really great that we're having this conversation with people as well respected as you at Pinnacle. Let's just look at the next slide. Sorry, this slide here. In today's session, sorry, Deji. Big shout out to Deji doing the slides for me. We're going to be looking at the sort of leadership implications around learning space design. We think of learning as the sort of third teacher, and I think if you're leading an education establishment, then it's really important to not ignore the implications of good learning space design, as opposed to the opposite. We're going to look at the links between space, pedagogy, and whole child development. And I think, as you pointed out before, Daryl, it is important to look at the whole child. I think sometimes we can look at schools in terms of their output. We can look at schools in terms of preparing the next workforce. But I think it's really important that we look at the experience, the user experience for everybody while they're in these learning spaces. And then we've got some very exciting opportunities because we want this to be a dialogue. We don't want this to be a sort of chalk and talk hour where you just sit and we just present things to you. We want this to be a conversation. So there will be a chance for you to meet and greet each other in some breakout rooms in a moment. There'll be a chance also, hopefully later on, for us to meet in person somewhere in the UK and hopefully in Denmark as well. And we want to make this a regular dialogue so that there are things that you can tell us about, because you're the experts in terms of what you do and where you are. And we're pretty good at what we do at Hortens, and we know that Pinnacle are fantastic at what they do as well. So if we pool that, there are some really exciting opportunities for us to look at together. So next slide, please. So a little poll for you. It'll pop up in a moment. If learning space design could improve these areas, and we're going to give you a little list of choices. I think there's other as one of the choices as well. In order of impact, so obviously the one you think could have the most impact, perhaps for the least heartache or the least resources. How might you rank these in order of priority for a setting that you know? Now, you may be an educator, so that's easy for you, or you may know of a setting which you think could do with some improvements. So take a look at the poll, have a look at and make a choice of the number one thing you think, if we were to work together on changing and improving these issues, what would they be? So in my chat, I can see a poll. We've got 6-7 responses. Thank you. There's 63 people on this call today. So let's see if we can get 63 responses to the poll. I feel like we should have some jingly music or something, Daryl. Lena.
Yeah, we'll put it on the wish list for next time.
Yeah, very good. I know exactly the music. I've got it in my head. Right, we're doing very well. We've passed the halfway point, so we're up to 37. It's like one of those live election nights, isn't it? 39 responses out of 64. This is very exciting.
It's interesting that student engagement has stayed at the top the whole time. When I filled the polling just then, I put student engagement at the top because I thought if the students are engaged, everything else can find its own order almost.
I think we've plateaued. Very good. Deji, can we see the results, or is that something we can send people afterwards? Maybe towards the yeah, I'll let you sort them out. Fantastic. And thank you, Margaret. You've said design will also maybe help teachers to be more creative in their delivery. Well, that's a very good point. I'm going to take you through those points now. Said Margaret, I love when people bring things up that are the next part of the slide. So next slide, please, Deji. Lena's got the results there. Fantastic. Look at that. Yeah, student engagement, then real life skills, then making the most of current buildings, then innovative pedagogies, and then retaining teachers. And thank you for the 50 people that responded. Fantastic. Okay, next slide, please, Deji. Now, learning is a right rather than a duty. There's this phrase of you've got to go to school. If you're a parent or if you know young people, this idea of you've got to go to school. Now, if we flip that on its head and you get to go to school, so seeing learning as a right rather than duty, we start to look at the possibilities of what learning and education can do. And that's the framing we want for today and for the dialogue we want to have you in this space program. This idea of the excitement, the possibility thinking, the future thinking that good learning, good education should have, that includes emotional, social, and creative growth. So it's not about you've got to turn up and get this stuff that's given to you. This should be exciting for everybody, educators included. And we think that learning space design, learning culture plays a really big part of that. And that's where all of us in this call today and in this dialogue in the space program, I think, can really get quite excited about what's out there. So I'm going to bring up some things now which are all sort of factual, that they're not particularly our opinion. And again, with that idea of, you've got to go to school versus you get to go to school. Let's look at these in terms of, rather than saying we've got to solve these problems, maybe we should look at it in terms of if we choose to, we get to solve these problems, whether we're architects, whether we're educators, whether we're working for Pinnacle or for Hortens. It's something which we should get very excited about. Okay, next slide, please, Deji. Yeah, another fact. It's been on the, if you're based in the UK, it's another, it's been on the news in the last week. A very, very large number of children who are voting with their feet in terms of whether they attend school or not. Now, we say at Hortens, unlike colleagues who are educators, kids can't necessarily quit their jobs. If we don't like a job we're in, we can move companies, we can change our roles or whatever. Kids don't necessarily get the right to do that, but we can see by those numbers there's something going on there. So there's something that we get, if we choose to look at in terms of the relevance, the autonomy, and the excitement to improve engagement. Now, I want to commend to you this book by a friend of ours at Hortens, by Jenny Anderson and Rebecca Winthrop. It's really a very significant book. It's been part of the Oprah Book Club. It's been very well respected and very well reviewed in the UK and in the US. And it looks at some of the issues that are facing young people, teenagers in particular, around their engagement. And I think there's something around the gift that we have in designing good spaces for learning and good cultures for learning. Next slide, please, Deji. SEND, another issue there, and I think if we are following the events of the government at the moment, it's something which is now being recognised as something which is a solution that needs to be found, and we get to be part of that. So if we're thinking about learning spaces, let's use that framing for what could good learning space design do to help with 1 in 5 of UK students now requiring some sort of SEND report. Next slide, please. Not just SEND, overall mental health. 50% of mental health conditions begin by the age of 14, so within that sort of secondary school period. And that's obviously hiding a figure there where there will be many children where there's something around their mental health conditions which might happen before that. So again, the framing of whatever our position is, whether we're educators, whether we're architects, whether we're involved with learning space design, wouldn't it be really amazing if the decisions that we make together, maybe via the space program, could address that? We get to do that if we choose to. Next slide, please, or build for that slide. Yeah, again, how exciting would it be if we could look at the learning spaces designs that would make the experience better for everybody? There's that terrible joke of, I don't want to go to school today. Well, you have to. You're 55 and you're the head teacher. So it's not just kids who perhaps aren't always enjoying the experience of education. We can see the figure there of large numbers leaving within 5 years. So again, is there something which we get to do if we choose to address that as a wicked problem, an amazing thing to sort out? Next slide, please. Okay. So we'd love you in the chat. This is part of you getting to know each other, and we'd like to think that there will be many of you who stay with us on this journey for some time to come. So let's hear from you now. So if you're connected to a school, either if you're an educator or you've recently perhaps even been an architect for a school or for adapting a space here, think about a space in a school that you've seen or that you've used that works well. So just put the library or the transition points, or whatever, one that works well, and about one that doesn't work as well. And we'll just see. We'll have a look through the chat to see what things are coming up. There might be some patterns here. So in the chat, share a space in a school that you've seen or used or designed that works well. Thanks, Jane. Dining and stairs. Thank you, Bill. Wilmer Hill School Library, amazing. Margaret, rooms identified for a specific purpose rather than generic spaces. Thanks, Ellen. School Library. Lena, a mobile house on wheels. Brighton College Labs. Second and third time libraries come up. Martin, thank you. Sports Hall. Very good. Well, let's take this conversation. Go on, Daryl.
Well, I was just looking at those messages coming in, and actually the commonality actually around some of them, like the library spaces and the shared activity dining and so on. Do you think it's the spaces where actually the students can take ownership of what they do in those spaces and how they learn that are coming up at the top?
That's a great question. Thank you, Daryl. Let's take that into the breakout rooms now. So Deji, thank you very much. We invite you now. We're going to put you into small breakout rooms so you can have a chance to actually have some dialogue, because it's quite hard with 64 of us to do that at this stage. So in a moment, you'll be invited to join a breakout room, and then take that question of just, if you've had a chance to look through the chat, to introduce yourself, what your role is, and then perhaps your link to learning spaces. And if you wish to pick up on Daryl's point of any comments from what you've seen in the chat, is it something about the common areas where there's a sense of autonomy or a sense of ownership that makes those learning spaces successful? So
breakout rooms will only last for a couple of minutes, won't they?
Yeah, we'll give you a shout. I think you get a 10-second warning before we kick you out. So we'll see you back here in a couple of moments. Thanks, Deji.
just literally. Oh, yeah, I'm back in the room now.
Well, that was awesome.
All right.
I'm a bit of a webinar novice, I'd have to admit, Alex. So I've never been in breakout rooms before, but
They definitely work, Darryl, because I think there's something about sitting for an hour and just watching people sort of show slides, but getting to know kind of 3 or 4 people, and it may be that these people end up, going on the flight to Denmark at some. My mic is, I don't know whether my mic is muting itself. So yeah, I'm Alex Ortens in London. I'm going to hand over to my wonderful colleague, Lena Jensby-Lang in Ortens in Copenhagen.
Thank you,
Lena,
Alex. And yeah,
I'm very sorry. We are just conscious of time. You got 15 minutes. Is that okay?
yes, that's fine. And please interrupt me when if I seem to run a bit over time. So hello, everybody. I'm going to share with you some Danish projects that I find inspiring myself. That I feel some projects where I feel learning environments is really such an important part of the learning experience that we get to create for students. And I'm just going to see if I cannot take over the slides. So Deshi, you might have to move the slides along for me. Thank you. I'm going to be sharing 3 projects if time allows. One is a tiny little project or a tiny little school that didn't have a lot of money, but they really wanted to change things. Then I've got the other end of the spectrum, which is a brand new school, a big fancy school, very exciting as well. And then a little sort of looking into classrooms and how might we tweak and change them and the journey of doing that. So Deshi, could you please move on to, thank you. So this is Høsterkøb School, a rural school, 200 students. And the school got in touch with us because they were at capacity in terms of their spaces. They had classes out in temporary buildings that needed to go away, and they couldn't find room for them inside their school. And I went and took a tour of the school with them, and they did have a lot of space that was underutilized and could be combined in different ways. So we ended up sort of like rearranging things. And next slide, Deshi, you can see on the next slide what things look like. They had these classrooms, and we talked about learning and pedagogy and the student experience and how the teachers wanted to be more, they wanted to collaborate. And I'm going to share some images of what it looks like now. So please go ahead, Deshi, and yes. So we changed from these sort of typical classrooms that we had throughout the school to much more inviting spaces where you can see in the corner back in the back of the room, you can sit, there's a little lamp. We have children working in groups in the other room. We've got this very cozy place where you can sit and read or chat, or so it really creates that cozy environment. I'm Danish, and so hygge is a very important part of, also a good quality of life. And we really believe that you need to have a good quality of life also as a student. It should
Lena,
be fun and yeah.
Sorry, there's no slide deck showing. I don't know if you're
Really?
supposed to be sharing your screen, or I just thought I'd say, because I've been in that position before.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Deshi, can you maybe unshare the slides and share them again? Deshi, yep, good. Let's see. And then move to, I don't know. Yep, thank you. Are they showing now? Yes, they are. Thank you so much for pointing that out. So maybe just go one slide back, Deshi, so that if people didn't see that either. So this was what the classrooms look like. And let's go and like the next slide and the next slide again. Because what we're doing with the school, what they did was to completely change the learning culture. Please move on to the next slide. So here they had a little sort of instruction zone where they'd get together and not speak for any longer than the children could really sort of focus on it. So maybe 10 minutes. And then they would go out and work where they felt it sort of supported them, and you're able to move around. And have a look at the next slide also. It's another example of a little sim where you can get a lot of kids together and have that conversation and a little bit of instruction, and then they can go and work in different places. Let's move to the next slide, please. So here, one of the things that kids were saying, like they just sit in the back of the room maybe, but now there's no back of the room, and the teachers were moving more freely, and were better able to support different needs that the students had. And one thing they also said, which is kind of funny, but they said the teachers were also a lot more quiet now with these new flexible spaces, not interrupting their work. Please move on to the next slide, Deji. Yes, and here you can see little nooks they create, and I think even underneath this table that you can see, I think there's a child there reading as well. So these are just very simple ways of tweaking your learning spaces, accessible to anyone really, with a lot of autonomy and choice for the students. And let's have a look at what they were saying on the next slide, Deji. Thanks. So this was, we asked them, what did it feel like before, and what does it feel like now, your experience of going to school? And this was what they said before. It's teacher-led, boring, and they were always looking for an excuse to maybe I need to sharpen my pencil or whatever, and didn't feel they had any influence on how they were working or what they were learning. And if we look at the next slide, what they said, they were talking about freedom and trust and how they could influence their own way of working. They could make choices and really self-regulate in terms of what they needed. And this school, we've got the same rooms ultimately. We didn't change that. We changed what we put into the rooms and how they were being used and organized. And it's the same fabulous teams of teachers that we've got, but a completely different experience of learning for the students. And let's move on to another school. And that's the other end of the spectrum. This is a big budget kind of investment, a completely new school for 700 students. And if we look at the next slide, you can see this is more for those of you who are architects. Maybe I'll just want to point out it's a 3-story building with the blue part on the ground floor. It's sort of the heart of the building, where we've got library, canteen, kitchen, a herb garden, the afternoon club, it's breakout spaces, it's stages, it's all sorts of things, because it's a very flexible space that really accommodates a lot of different things. And then it's organized by year groups, and each year group has a hub. And they do have 3 different classrooms, and they have a common area. But they can also use it very flexibly as a whole court of 80 students to go and do different things and collaborate. And this particular school is designed for project-based learning. I've put a little video together, so let's have a look at that, Deji. And you might need to turn down the sound if it's very. Yes, no, it's fine. I think it's I'll maybe turn it down a little bit, because then I can speak about what we're seeing. This is sort of that heart room in the middle of the school with the library, and it's like a little hill. Daisy, can you turn the sound down? Is that possible? We've got a cave space underneath that hill, and here we see the classrooms with a instruction zone and different collaboration zones. You can sit in the windows, and you've got collaborative spaces. And in each hub, you've got creative spaces, you've got collaboration spaces, and even these little nooks that you can move around. So it's really flexible with a lot of choice for students. I'll just put in some pictures here of the consultation process that we did with teachers and with students, also prototyping and talking about what learning should look like and what we wanted, what we wanted the experience to be, so that pedagogy and spaces would really come together. And the students even designed these screen tables, something that they wanted there. Yeah, so it's really quite a lovely school, and also with outdoor classrooms to really get your hands dirty and yeah, work on a lot of different things. Thank you, Daishi. So that was like one, a new school that opened last year. And here we've got a tiny little project. We're zooming in. It's a Copenhagen school, this one. And they asked us to work with a couple of classes and the team of teachers around these two classes to look at how learning space design might help create a more inclusive learning experience and a more inclusive classroom, and how we might help these help improve the whole experience of what is taking place here. And they are struggling with a lot of things in this school, and it's very difficult sometimes for them to get sort of like enough sort of quiet time to focus on the work. And so we're looking at how we might look at the spaces. So let's have a go at that little video here. Just if you go back, there's a video. Thank you. So this was what the classrooms looked like before. And then we started working with the teachers and with the students in particular. We were prototyping, we were asking them all sorts of questions and discussing what they need, what they want, and what would be helpful for them. And then try to see how can we do some, try out things before we end up buying new stuff. So we are just in the middle of trying out different things. So that's the same classroom that we've like split into sort of more focused zones and more variety, more choice, and a different way of working. So this is not just about learning space design. It's also how the teacher plans the lesson and the whole didactic design of what's taking place here. And it's a sort of continued collaboration and journey with a lot of pedagogical discussions here too. So we're in the middle of trying this out, just sort of temporary things it was in the school already. So we just like rearranged things and put them into that classroom. And in a month or so, we're going to evaluate and look at how might we create some more permanent solutions here. Next slide, please. So this is all to say that you can do so many things. You've got your walls, or maybe you're building something new, but if you've got your walls, you've got the areas, and there's so much you can do in terms of if you want to be intentional about creating a learning culture. If you want something more collaborative, or what are the cohort of students working together, what kind of flexibility do you want? What do you want to enable? And just go over the next 3 slides slowly, Daishi. So we've got, it could be, you can do traditional classrooms, or on the next slide, we've got what we could call sort of an enriched classroom environment where you have more flexibility and more choice and different places where you can work, and it's better suited to also students working in groups and teachers collaborating. Or you can go sort of all in and do the sort of learning hub model where you have a lot more flexibility and you move into rooms when you need sort of more focused time, and then you collaborate like in a sort of modern working environment as well. And next slide, please. And just go over the next few slides. These are just examples of what it might look like. Also the next one. Just examples from, I think, from Danish schools of how we're working with learning spaces to try and create an engaging environment. Also the last one, which is something in a library. And I was there, we had created this little environment in that library. And I went there one day and I was asking a student, like, tell me about how you're using this space. And then she said to me, if you look at that image there, in the back, like behind that lake, there's a little bench. I go and sit there every day. And I was just like, oh, this is just like it's a mural on the wall, but it created a safe space for her to sort of go to in a way. I'm just going to show you a little bit about how we work and how do you co-create? How do you make sure it's not just what you had yesterday? So this is like a little funny like time-lapse thing. Just go ahead, Daishi, and press the play button. So we developed a method that we call Learning Space Design Lab to really enable teachers and students to reimagine what you can do in your spaces. There's really a lot of choice, and it's about being intentional in terms of what suits you. And next slide, just also the next few slides. What suits you and how can you begin to discuss and collaborate with each other around, and also sort of negotiate with each other around what kind of learning culture you want to promote here, what you want to invite. And last slide, Daisy. So it's really to enable something that makes us like move away from our sort of traditional thinking, because we use our hands, we play, we collaborate, we prototype, and along the way, we're building a shared understanding of what the future might look like. We're creating ownership and creating those solutions together. And that's sort of like a start on many of the journeys of transformation that we're part of. And of course, you need to be very clear, where is it you're going? You'd need professional development, you'd need probably, and need that support in terms of what is the purpose of these learning environments that we're putting in, and how do we follow up? How do we make sure that that is sort of that culture that is unfolding? Yeah, so that was sort of a little journey to some Danish skills with me. So thank you very much for listening here.
Thank you, Lena. Deji, would you mind stopping the share and then resharing the slides again? I've just seen a comment on the chat 1 minute ago from Rita, who can't see the slides. So maybe just do that, stop sharing, share again. Yeah, totally agree with Ethel. Absolutely wonderful. Go for it, Mark and Matt.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Mark Allen. I'm the operations director here at Pinnacle. I was a former teacher, physics and maths teacher in a secondary school, and now I run the project delivery for Pinnacle. The nice thing about my job is that I get to see the spaces as they sort of transform from, you know, a steel shell to the reality. And I was lucky enough recently to visit one of these schools. Deji, could you move on to the next slide, please? And again. Yes, so this is East Calder Primary School, which is a primary school just west of Edinburgh that we were lucky enough to be part of and work on. Kevin Cooper of Nor Architects came up with a fantastic vision for this building. It's a very unique triangular building, which is highly energy efficient. It's just a stunning building, and I was lucky enough last month to go back to this school when it was actually in use, and it was being used on a Friday afternoon. And Fiona Stewart, who's the head teacher, very, very inspiring leader, spared her time to walk us around the school and to see the benefits of the space being used. If you can move on to the next slide, please, Deji. Sorry, I actually just go back one. What I didn't mention was this space here is the view from reception. So they've got this amazing hella up seating that's used opposite the dining space, and they've got this very nice graphic you can see on the wall there. That's a continuous line that goes all the way around this triangular building, which is just absolutely fantastic. It sort of represents the continuous flow of this building. Yeah, if you go to the next slide now, please. So the thing about this primary school is that it's very open plan. So there's no doors on any of the classrooms. You can see here, you can see the glass partition, but there's actually no door. And what Fiona was saying to us as we walked around is that she had to bring the teachers on the journey with her through the design phase. She had teachers who've been at that primary school for 30 years and had to really coach them into this idea of moving into not only a new building but also a new way of using this building as well. You know, no doors and a completely new building is quite a lot to take for a teacher of teaching in the same building for 30 years. So they've got these lovely breakout spaces. You can see one there on the right hand side. That's actually part of the early years, and that's between two of these classrooms. And it's absolutely fantastic seeing it used and sort of shared between the two spaces, but they can go back to their individual classrooms as well. If you can move on to the next slide, please, Deji. Yeah, so this is the library in the centre of the building on the left-hand side here. It's also my background as well. I've been looking at myself. Look, I've got two big green ears here, but that is actually space within the library, and you can see the different spaces that the children can go and use, a bit like the examples we saw in Denmark. So the rest of the space here on the right-hand side is some of the more breakout spaces. And in the far of that picture as well, you've got this individual booth, where two students can work. And Fiona was saying to us that this space in particular is the only one of these booths that can't be seen from any of the classrooms. So the students really see this as the most special space. If they get to work in there, you know, it's a real privilege for them, which was just it was really interesting to see, and seeing all these spaces being used is just absolutely brilliant. The library space is right in the middle as well, so it's very light because of the light from above, but it's a real safe space because it's right in the centre of the building on the first floor. If you move on to the next slide, please, Deji, and then go again. So the other example I just wanted to show is Calderwood Primary, which is about 2 miles away from East Calder. So you can see here what they've done here is some of the breakout spaces are actually under the stairs. So they're utilising some space that you'd never think of using, but it's just off the classrooms there. I think we've got a slightly better picture on the next slide as well. Yeah, so you can see that the similarities in the glass partition for the classroom. Fiona at East Calder was very, very keen to tell me that although they did visit Calderwood, East Calder was its own school, and they had their own design. It wasn't copied. It was sort of taken some inspiration from, which is really, really good. I'm going to hand over to Matt now to speak about a couple of more case studies from us.
Thank you, Mark. That's very interesting. Yeah, I'm Matt Hoy. I've been working at Pinnacle now for a number of years. I'm a project consultant, and I've been helping design learning spaces probably now for around 20 or so years. So this project we're going to look at first of all is Shiplake College. So this is on Henley-on-Thames in the UK. Next slide, please. So Shiplake College engaged us to help them upgrade their science facilities. They wanted a really modern and innovative education experience. So we introduced Convolve, which is our reconfigurable modular furniture system, which really enables them to adapt the spaces so they can keep up with changing teaching methods and changing ways of pedagogies and learning. So you can reconfigure the space very easily. It's a modular furniture system. Next slide, please, Digi. So what's really interesting here is traditional sort of school science labs can feel quite cold and clinical. So what we tried to do for this space is start to introduce wall graphics. So as you see here, there's science-related graphics on the wall, on the ceiling. So really helping to create a really buzzy environment, interesting learning environment. So it's not just about the furniture and the layouts, it's about using all of the space and trying to bring those themes into the designs. So these visual elements really can help learning, you know, memory retention, subject matter. So it's about using all the walls as well to reinforce those messages. So really these 4 labs all been transformed into modern dynamic learning environments, and exactly what the school's vision was. Next slide, please. So the next project we're looking at, this is Rodine Schools. This is a girls' boarding school near Brighton in the UK. So next slide, please. So this is an interesting project as well. This is actually a listed building. So Rodine engaged us to redevelop their kind of multi-purpose learning space, really turn it into sort of an LRC, a library space. One of the key things we have to be mindful of here, probably common problem we all come across is listed buildings. So we've got to be very careful what we do with the fabric of the building. So we're not fixing any storage units to the wall. So really making sure we're maximising other spaces. So the curved library units you can see here are all on casters, and some of the other units, so we can transform the space into one big open space. And also there's sort of a stage area as well. It's going to be used for performances, so we can push all the library units to the side. So it's about flexibility and adaptability. Next slide, please, Deji. So you can see the curved units on the left there, and then you can see there we've actually started to use some of the shelving, actually using the stairs to actually maximize our storage space and really use every inch of this space for storage. So this is really about flexibility and adaptability. So traditionally libraries can be very sort of static spaces and very heavy, but actually you can make them flexible and adaptable. Next slide, please, Deji. So here again, you can see we've got this really nice spiral staircase, and we're actually again maximising storage. So actually using that and actually putting the storage around the spiral staircase, and also utilising the mezzanine up there. So we've still got storage up on the mezzanine, but still retaining the character and the feel of the traditional, listed building elements as well, and not impinging upon that. So it can all be moved around. There's nothing fixed to the walls. So it's about adaptability and flexibility again. Thank you. Next slide, please. So this project, Forest Schools. This is a comprehensive school, secondary school, and this really is about, again, this is looking at science spaces and trying to be very careful, be mindful about budget, but trying to make really interesting spaces. So I think, it's about using things cleverly. So it's about using graphics on the floor, about putting things on the ceiling. It's quite interesting here. There is familiar with floor is lava. So obviously this particular image is here. So it's obviously really, kids love this. It's a really exciting space for them. And we've got this sort of space station image above. So it's using all the space to make a really interesting environment. It's not just about, the furniture. It's about, again, the walls, the floors, the ceilings, and really maximising what you can do in there. Next slide, please. So again, now starting to use some other graphics again, but very, very cost effective. So it's about really single digit investment can create double digit, exciting experiences and spaces, but still be very cost effective and within budget. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll hand you back over to Daryl now. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt and Mark. Some fantastic case studies there. So we've got a bit of time for just throw the floor open. People can either pop questions in the chat or unmute and speak up, but we've got quite a lot of experience on the panel. I won't be answering them all, you can be sure of that. I'll just push them on to the best person. Lena looks happy, so I reckon she's good for a couple of questions.
Or comments.
Yes.
I mean, we want this, Daryl. We want this to be an interactive thing. So the expertise isn't just with us. There's a lot of people there's 55 of us now still here. There's a lot of expertise with people who are attending today. So let's, if you don't have a question, just comments are very welcome as well. Let me ask a question. Open to anybody here at all. Is there anything you've seen so far? So we've got some lovely things. Margaret, Jane. Oh, okay. Jane O'Leary, if you could do one thing, what would it be? That's lovely. Oh, Ethel loves the stone.
Could I? Yeah. I could jump on that one. Oh, if you could do one thing, what would that be? Can I answer 10 times? I think my one thing would be, it depends on the role you have, of course. If you're a teacher, that would be like engaging the students in a conversation around what do we need here and how might we tweak the space that we have. So I think it would be bringing in student voice and opening up, more options in the learning spaces that we have.
Lena, yeah. I was thinking about this. I think that's a fantastic question. If you do one thing, what would it be? What do you think about encouraging teachers to be braver and experiment more and perhaps let go a bit? Because actually you can do such a lot with what you've got already. I mean, even the most boring classroom arrangement of tables and chairs can be reconfigured so easily, but you kind of need this bravery to do that.
Do you know what I think makes people braver is if they kind of answer the question of like what's the maximum positive impact something can have for the least amount of resources, effort, obstacles. And if you kind of frame anything in that question, I think, Lena, you said about student engagement. We've got that lovely image of a young person making a beautiful environment with a cardboard box sort of 3 times behind and on 2 sides of their head. And it makes this beautiful little space, and it's literally a cardboard box. We all know that beautiful cliche for parents.
Yeah,
kids
it ties in with one of the questions here in the chat, Alex. Do you find these busier interactive spaces are taken positively with students who are neurodiverse? That's of course a question in terms of like the graphics on the floor and the the ceiling. But generally, I find that if we create more choice and also make sure that we have options for all sorts of needs in the spaces that are available to students during lessons, I think it's, we can do a much better job than just like having desks in rows in rooms that do not speak to you and do not have that care that goes into these spaces where you try to sort of invite imagination more.
And teaching and learning shouldn't just be about attention grabbing, should it? So those children who are struggling to be faced in a place where they don't feel free or able to function. It's a shame that we assume children need to be contained initially, and the other option is to not contain them.
Yeah.
That's
And
a
what
great
we
point.
see in many of the schools that we are working with when they create these flexible spaces, that you get the opportunity to get up and move around or go to another place, and then you can come back to that situation later, but like you can find a bit of peace and quiet somewhere, and you can self-regulate. I think that's really, really important.
So Helen's asked another question, which I just filled with Mark Allen, actually. But just going back to the previous question about students that are neurodiverse, I was thinking about East Calder because you've got these big openings into each classroom, just straight onto a corridor, no doors. You think, well, how distracting is that? And yet you've actually got, even the classrooms, they're not just rows, you've got all these little cubby holes. And so the student can actually find a space that works for them because they've got the freedom to do so. But could you answer that question, Mark, about the breakout space?
Yeah, so it not being overseen, I think I made the point there was sort of this special place, but what's really nice about this triangular building is that Fiona had these. There's an office in each of the three corners, so she's got one of them, and then two members of her senior leadership. And she said, it's really nice because they're constantly moving around that building, and just because the areas weren't sort of overlooked by a classroom, there was when we were there was actually one of the teachers, we sort of said, oh, where's that teacher? But because it's so well laid out with the open plan kind of nature, but individual classrooms and the glass as well, the teacher can be in sort of two different spaces and have good vision of each of them, and the library is a good example of that. It's right in the middle, and it can be seen from various places. The example I was given was one sort of particular area, but there's constantly staff moving around the building, and we witnessed it when we were there as well.
I think just to jump in very quickly, I was on that visit with Mark, and on the comment about sort of neurodivergence or any sort of ASN as well. One of the best stories actually Fiona told us that day was of a pupil who completely non-verbal and in the old school would never be able to attend assemblies or anything like that. And in the new school, because there are these nooks that actually overlook the main hall where they have the assemblies, he actually now comes to one of those windows and sits in one of those nooks and watches the assembly and takes part in it. It's the first time he's ever done that. So it was really cool to see how the building and something we'd done actually really impacted that child's experience of it.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story, and even as she was saying it, thanks, Mike. Yeah, even as Fiona was sort of telling us the story, she said, "Oh, I've got goosebumps right now." And I think we all did just hearing this story of this child attending assembly for the first time, and he was actually behind her the first time, wasn't he, Mike? And all the students sort of were sort of so amazed that he was there, and she just said, he's up there, isn't he? And they all sort of shared that experience together.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's wonderful.
Very good. Should we go to the next slide, Deji? So what's next? And then next slide again. I love that comment, Mark, about goosebumps from Fiona. Wouldn't it be really interesting if over the course of this group convening there, so you're very experienced in what you do at Pinnacle, we're very experienced at All Turns, we've got amazing people who've joined us today, we've now got 51 of us still with us. Thank you for staying with us. But this is new, so we haven't decided yet exactly how we want this to be. We've got some ideas, but we want to throw this open to you. So there's lots of things that we could suggest, and you might go, well, no, that's not what we want. So please tell us what you think might be interesting for you. So one idea might be action learning sets, of just looking at some of these wicked problems and seeing if we can get goosebumps about solving them. Going back, trying them in, you know, if we're architects, if we're learning space designers, if we're educators, trying stuff out there. That didn't work. That was terrible. That did work. Mark, I love that example of that nook, meaning a child with various needs can be included. That's, you know, that's something we can get excited about. We would love to include teachers and young people, maybe not in a forum like this, but you know, maybe separately to actually have some focus groups, have some really interesting dialogues with those young people, and really delve into what it is that they would love. To co-create, we've heard that word a lot from you, from Daryl, from us at Hortense. And then we've started, you know, with the tea and cake to get you to come along today. I'm sure you didn't come just for the tea and cakes, but we want to make this interesting to you. So our intention is to have every half term something virtual, an hour like this, and it won't just be us talking, it'll be us listening to you as much as we can as well. Every term meeting somewhere in various parts of the UK, London or Manchester or whatever. And then if you're interested, maybe once a year, starting off going to see some of these places and other places that we've developed at Hortense in Denmark. We've got some great comments from the stuff that you've shown, Lena. So that's what we're offering. If you want to be part of that, look at the QR codes that have been part of this, look at the invitations that came to you today. Thank you so much for being here. Daryl, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Desi. Would you mind jumping to slide 67, conscious of time? I just want to say thank you very much to everyone for their time investment. One thing I would like to mention, as Alex has said, we'd like to do more of these virtual events. We'd like to do face-to-face events. They must create real value for the attendees. So we've got a feedback form going out. It might already be in your inbox. And please give us honest, candid feedback. And hopefully we can continue to build value for everyone. Feel free to reach out to Hortense. Feel free to reach out to Pinnacle. We've got information around our space model here. We'd love to hear from you. Love to see how space can apply to your project. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.
Yes.